Now, into the ticket office of Disneyland.
Oh boy, let's do this.
Don't think the CIA is going to be trying to hack your second-gen iPod.
I didn't think so. There might have been a lot of illegal music on there. I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean...
You were supposed to bring death to the flagships, not join them.
Google has found a new way to piss me off.
iTunes is a constant source of embarrassment.
Every time I say it, it's going to suck even more.
May I present to you the cat?
I am Nadella. I can't do it anymore without laughing. I was going to do the whole thing.
Welcome, everyone, to the Calling All Platforms podcast. I am your host, Wes, and I'm here with Landon.
Hello.
And Caleb.
Wow, I don't think I can do anything that's going to make it worth that. So I don't.
Or worse.
I'm here.
Too.
I don't know.
And we are here to talk all things tech, you guys. Dear listener, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you hopping in. And if this is your first time,
We apologize
welcome.
right now.
My apologies.
He doesn't usually open up exactly like that, I promise.
Sometimes. I was kind of going for that. Do you remember the old Legend of Zelda cartoon that they had where he was always like, "Excuse me, princess." It was like in the 90s. Remember that?
Wasn't that from that awful Philips game that was like on the...
No, it was a cartoon.
It was
the
a
Legend
cartoon?
of Zelda.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. And they tried to like give Link like this 90s edge thing. And so anytime the Zelda would get after him, he'd be like, "Well, excuse me, princess." Yeah.
That's
what I was going for. But obviously that's lost on even the hosts here. So I'm going to move on.
Yeah, no, I've never even heard of that.
Oh, awesome. Well, we have an event we need to talk about here. First thing on the docket is the Google I.O.
Yes, listener. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this right now. My throat kind of hurts, and I don't know how.
Yeah.
If I just get quieter throughout the episode or through talking about this, that's why. And if you just stop
Just
hearing me
stops.
altogether, it's because my voice is gone. So that's something to look forward to, I suppose. All right, so Google had their main actual I.O. event this week. Last week we talked about the Android Show I.O. edition, which was weird in and of itself. But this one was the main keynote, the main developer conference that they have every year. And last week, like I said, we talked about the Android Show, and I mentioned how they kind of just, it was very packed. For a 20-minute video, they had a lot of stuff inside of there. This was basically the opposite of that. It was 2 hours, just under 2 hours long, and it should have been an hour. Like, very easily probably could have. If you were to watch this and turn a drink and like create a drinking game out of it, just any time they repeat themselves, like full sentences, full on repeating themselves, you would die because of how much you had to drink, because they repeated themselves so much, like full on like features. They would just repeat this feature. A different person talking about a completely different thing would talk about the same feature they just mentioned 10 minutes ago. Like, oh, it was very odd.
This is not the thing you're supposed to be copying from Apple, Google. That's not.
Seriously.
Don't do that.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's almost like as I was watching this, I had the thought, I was like, did they just put certain things into Gemini and say, "Hey, create a keynote based on this stuff," and that's what it gave? Because that's kind of what it sounded like. Because AI, when you do that, if you listener, if you listen to our AI podcast, you might understand. Because if you give it something that's like, just make a keynote or make a presentation about this, it's going to repeat itself multiple times because it just does. That's what it sounded like. It was very odd. I didn't like it. It was weird. But speaking of using Gemini, I did watch the keynote. I watched the whole thing, unfortunately. Some of it was actually pretty interesting. But after I watched it, I didn't take notes like I sometimes do. I didn't have time to take notes. I barely had time to watch it this week. I've been really busy. But I watched it, and after I watched it, I took the YouTube URL for the video, plugged it into Gemini, and said, hey, give me a rundown of what is talked about in this video.
Oh, interesting.
And it actually gave me like quite a bit of notes, and actually pretty good notes. And then on top of that, if there were anything in there that I wanted to give a little more detail on, I was like, well, give me some more detail on this part of it. And it did that. And it also gave me like different like minute and second sections. Is like, here's where they talk about this, here's where they talk about that, and you can click on it and it'll go straight to that part of the video. Actually extremely helpful.
That's awesome.
So listener, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, don't. Just go honestly just go watch one of those Google I/O in 10 minutes or less type videos, because there's a bunch of those out there too. I should have really have done that. If I would have known what the full thing was going to be, that's what I would have done. But anyways, let's get on to what they actually talked about, and it was Gemini. There's the whole thing. No, I mean, basically that was pretty much all of it. They started off the thing basically like talking about how all the stuff that really nobody cares about, all the numbers and teraflops and random crap that they think people care about, but even developers I don't really think care about that stuff. Some of the new features that are coming to Gemini, well, I guess these aren't necessarily coming to Gemini, but they're just new features that are going to be coming in when it comes to Google's AI products and capabilities and things like that. They talked about this thing called Google Beam, and that was, I can't remember what they called it before it was Google. Like, they changed it to Google Beam. It was a project beforehand because they have so many projects, which we'll get to in a little bit. But this was something they did last year where it's the video conference call, but it makes it look 3D. Like, it makes it kind of look like the person is there with you without them being there with you. And they just gave some updates to that, and it actually does look a little bit better. Again, this is not something that just anybody can do. You got to have, like, they've got a whole camera array set up to where it videos you, and then you also have the person that you're talking to has to have the same system. It's weird, but it was kind of cool. They talked about some new real-time speech translation that's going to be now available inside of Google Meet for English and Spanish, and more languages are going to be coming to that. And they actually gave a little video showcasing this. So inside of Google Meet, you can talk with people in your own language, and then the person on the other line will hear it in their language. And it's kind of like if you had a translator there, like you start talking, they start hearing you, and then the AI takes that, and then while you're talking, it then starts voicing it in the other language to the person that's there listening to you. That was kind of cool, and I think that's something that could actually be utilized in a lot of different scenarios, especially in business. Like if you're talking to someone that's in a different part of the world, you use Google Meet, and you can both speak your own native language, and it works a lot better than trying to either you speak their language not very well or they speak your language not very, there's always going to be some issues there. But this actually looked like it would work pretty well. I was actually pretty impressed with that. They talked about some new things coming to Gemini Live, which was formerly known as Project Astra. Gemini Live is inside the Gemini app. But they just basically gave us some new updates that this is faster. And like I said, they added it inside the Gemini app, and they also made it available on both Android and iOS. So if you have the Gemini app on iOS, you can use Gemini Live. So it can use your camera and your screen to be able to, you can ask it questions based on what it sees inside of there. And it's pretty cool. This other project, oh my God, this was the thing. It's like they have so many projects that are all basically the same thing with one or two tweaks. And that's kind of where they repeated themselves a lot. And it was, no, I don't I don't understand. They just need to combine all this into one thing, and that's what it is. I don't know. But this one, Project Mariner, it's as this says, it's an agent that interacts with the web now with multitasking and teach and repeat features. So I actually asked to give a little more detail about this one, but this one, like on the web, it basically, as it says here, Mariner can directly interact with websites, allowing it to get things done online rather than just pulling information. It can, and like the teach and repeat capability, it says you can demonstrate a task to Mariner once, and it will learn the process, allowing it to repeat similar tasks in the future. Basically, it's an automation type system in that regard. And it can do it on the web in different ways to like interact with different websites that you use on a regular basis and things like that. It was pretty interesting.
Wow, maybe I'm terrible that this is where my brain immediately went upon hearing you describe that. But I get the sense that we may very well soon have websites that are designed to completely move the entire UI around every time you visit them, so that your Google agent will be clicking on ads so that website will get more ad revenue.
Oh, jeez.
You know, I could see that. I could see that.
Cool. This is a really great path that we're headed down. I'm so happy.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Oh.
The internet is definitely not going to get even less usable after this. Okay. Anyways, continue.
Well, so the example that they gave at I.O., it says in the Gemini app's agent mode, that's another part of this, is agent mode. They're calling these different agents. I don't know why, because naming's fun. But they asked it, basically, it's like, we want to find an apartment in this city that allows for this and this, like different details. And then it goes and searches the web and different websites, and it actually brought up everything on Zillow, and then it gives you different apartments based on what things you want. So you don't have to go and find, okay, these are some different apartments in the area I'm looking for, but this one doesn't have what I want. This one has two things that, it kind of gives you a list of all the different apartments that actually are going to have the thing. It basically does the research for you. And that was kind of cool. And then inside of Gmail, they're adding personalized smart replies. So they already were using Gemini to give you smart replies, but if you've ever used the smart replies inside of Gmail, they're very generic. At least they have been for the past few years. This one, the way the smart reply works is if you allow it to, it can access more than just the email that you're looking at, obviously. It can go through different emails. Like the example that they gave on this one was somebody was emailing asking, hey, we're going to be going to Utah on this trip. What are some things, we know you were there recently. What are some things that you would recommend doing? And so he was like, if I were to send the email, I might miss some things or whatever just by myself. So I use the personalized smart reply, and it'll go through, find my like different maps, locations that I used where I was at, and then it gives a recommendation list of things to do, basically, and it puts it in your voice because, like I said, it can go through your past emails that you've sent. It kind of knows an idea of how you type things out and how you write emails, and it can kind of word it in a way that you would, and then you can go in and tweak it, obviously. It just gives you, it's like, hey, this is what I want to say. You can go in and change some few things there and here and there, and it actually was pretty cool. It's not something that I think I would ever use, but it's kind of a cool little tool. This is the thing I like about what Google is doing with AI stuff. They're actually presenting usable ways for people to, have AI in their lives. Whereas like Apple, they're going to tell you what they want you to do with AI and then not let you do it for 2 years.
True.
The next thing they mentioned was Gemini inside of Chrome. That's kind of self-explanatory. They're going to add a little Gemini button on Chrome, and then you can just have basically quick access to Gemini anywhere, and then it can it's supposed to be able to look through different tabs and different things like that you have open. And obviously, whatever page you're on, it can look at. So I don't know. They didn't go into a lot of detail. That's something that's coming in the future.
Yes. How very edge of you, Google.
Yes. All right. The next thing they talked about was Imagine 4. And this is when I think most people called it Imagen. It's basically their image generator. And it's spelled Imagen, which is why a lot of people called it Imagen, because it's Image N. But it's they were actually saying it's Imagine. It's like, why didn't you just call it or spell it Imagine then, Google? But they've got a new version of this. And I've actually in the past week, used an updated version of this inside of the Gemini app. I don't know if it's Imagine 4 or what. But basically, they were saying it actually now creates text properly. Imagine that, weird. Because if you ever did image generation in any other AI, the text is never correct if legible in any way.
I honestly thought that was the best part.
I loved it.
You generate these images and the signs would say stuff like, plorp instead of stop and that kind of thing. It was great.
It was great. Now, I did use this past week, and it actually worked really well. I was using it for a project that one of my kids had in school. They were making a food truck menu, and so they were creating a logo, and she already had a logo that she made up, but she wanted to try it. She's like, let's use AI to create a logo. So I did, and it actually gave me exactly the text that I was looking for, and it looked really good, and I was actually very impressed with it. So that's pretty cool. And a lot of the images that they're coming up with are a lot more realistic. Like, I mean, you can still kind of tell that they're AI generated, and they do have embedded watermarks, whether they're visible watermarks or back-end watermarks. Like, so you can't really get away with using this stuff and not like a lot of websites nowadays are able to read whether it's AI generated. So
yeah, well,
but it is still. It's getting a lot more realistic, so it is harder to tell in some cases that it's AI generated, but it is pretty cool. All right. The next one that was actually probably one of the most impressive things, these next two things, is Veo 3. Veo is their video generative AI, and this other one called Flow. So Veo 3 is basically just an updated version of their video generative AI, and it actually can now do audio as well inside of the video, and it's not like it kind of like it takes what you give it and it gives contextualized audio with it, and it actually was extremely impressive how well it worked. Even like people could talk, like say different things, and the video would match what they're saying, and it was kind of scary, but kind of cool at the same time.
Yeah.
And then this flow thing they talked about is an AI filmmaking tool combining Veo 3, Imagine 4, and Gemini it's basically like an editing software inside of Gemini to create videos. And they showed it like you could, like they gave it a different prompt and stuff, and it would make a little video. And it'll give you the clip, and then you can either add to the clip to another scene, or you can ask it to extend this clip a little longer with another text phrase, or you can completely change, like you can cut the clip a little shorter and change how it ends up. So the video that they showcased was an old guy in a car who wanted to make a flying car, and the way he did it was by having a 10-foot chicken in the back of the car. And he drove off a cliff, and the chicken would start to fly. It was really weird, but I mean, it's AI. So, and the way it first went is the guy drives off the cliff, and it just with the 10-foot chicken in the back, and it just plummets to the ground. And then they bring the clip back and say, actually make it actually fly, and then it changes, and shows the guy driving off the cliff, and then it's flying off into the sunset. It was actually pretty cool the way it worked.
Oh boy!
And they did it relatively quickly, so. That was kind of cool. They introduced some new subscription plans with the Google AI Pro And then they also introduced Google AI Ultra, which, I mean, don't do this one because, listener, I mean, I don't know who needs the Gemini Ultra plan or even the Gemini Pro plan. The Gemini Pro plan is what was it, $20 a month, $15 a month, something like that. And you get access to basically all the features that are there, all the not latest, but some of the best features that they have for the public. This Gemini Ultra plan is literally like, as they are creating new features, it's going to come to you as soon as it's available, like even faster than the Pro plan. And it's $250 a month.
Yeah.
And you don't. Now, it does come with 30 terabytes of Google Cloud storage, but it's $250 a month. So don't do that, please. Like I said, I don't know who needs that because that's just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
All right. One of the next, I'm going to skip this thing because I want to talk about it last. But this other thing going on, they talked about AI coming to Google Search, and they're going to have AI mode in Google Search. So basically, like when you search something, you search for it, and then at the very top, it's got a little toolbar that like is shopping, photos, or different, like things like that. And then you can click on AI mode. They're going to have that there too. And that basically just turns what your search is into an AI version of that search. It's not AI overviews, because AI overview is basically just like a little summary type AI thing inside a search, which can be helpful. Sometimes is, sometimes isn't. This AI mode is basically just searching inside of Gemini, more or less. And then it's a little more detailed, and you can add on to the search and different things. It's, like I said, it's basically just searching with Gemini, but inside of Google Search. So it's just a different way to do the same thing somewhere else. I don't know. Along with that, they added this new feature that I thought was really interesting. Now, I haven't tried this yet. I don't know if I have access to it or not, but it's called the try-on feature. And basically, it allows you to virtually try on clothes inside of Google Shopping.
Didn't Amazon do this? Like with their camera or something?
Kind of. They did it in a way. It was not nearly as good as what this is, at least in the videos that I've seen. Like, obviously, Google's presentation on this was really good, but I have seen third-party, like other people, use this feature and put videos on Reels or YouTube Shorts, and it actually does work for the most part. So what you have to do is you have to have a full body picture of yourself, and then when you're looking at, if you're shopping for clothes, you can be like, you can do the click on the virtual try on thing, and like you add your picture of yourself there, and then it will basically put the clothes on you, more or less. Which, again, in the videos that I've seen of it, does seem to work relatively well. There are a few cases where it's like, well, you probably shouldn't be trying that on. But, And then along with that, they have a new checkout system where if you find something that you like and apparently does fit you because the try-on feature showed that it fits you, you can start a little thing inside of search where it's like, okay, if it gets to this price, then alert me. And so it'll keep an eye on if it drops to a certain price or whatnot, it'll give you an alert, and then you can buy it right there from whatever website, and you can just pay with Google in one click and ready to go. Or you can go in and make some minor tweaks to however you're buying it, different things like that. So that was kind of a neat little feature. So you can search for something inside of Google and then save it, and then when it gets to a certain price, it can alert you to let you know, hey, the item you wanted is now at the price you wanted from this website. Do you want to buy it? Kind of cool. And, of course, they had to talk about a lot of AI stuff for developers. We don't need to talk about that because I don't care. I'm not a developer. And it's and it kind of goes back to the stuff at the beginning where it's all the numbers and teraflops and blah, 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 blah. I don't understand most of what they're talking about when it comes to that stuff. But the most interesting part of this whole keynote to me was when they started talking about Android XR. Now, this is their XR platform that's coming to Android. Well, I guess not coming to Android, but it's coming to different headsets. It's basically their VR / mixed reality type platform. They've been working with Samsung for a while. You've probably heard of Project Muhan. That's Samsung's VR AR headset that they're coming out with to compete with the Apple Vision Pro. When in reality, it's not going to compete with the Apple Vision Pro because it's probably going to cost $2,000 less than the Apple Vision Pro because it's not Apple. But this new software is basically supposed to work with anything from that type of headset to glasses. And they also said that they are going to be partnering with some glasses companies that you've probably... there's one of these I hadn't heard of. One company is called Gentle Monster. They make prescription lenses or glasses and stuff. And then the other one is Warby Parker. I have heard of Warby Parker. They do make really good glasses. But they're partnering with them to have actual glasses that you can get with prescription lenses. And they actually showcased some different ones during the keynote. And they did a live showcase of this thing, and it worked relatively well. But I mean, it's live, so there's potential for issues there. But they showed the person that first was showing it. She was backstage, and she was talking about some different things. It was showcasing what she was seeing on the glasses and different things. And she would walking around. She was asking questions. So she saw a picture. So they're at Shoreline Amphitheater, which is a concert venue and stuff like that. She saw some pictures of a band on a wall. She was like, "What is this band?" And it told her who the band was. And she's like, "Well, can you play me a song that they've performed here before?" And they put up a video of different songs, and was like, "That's actually kind of cool." And then she went out on stage, and the guy that was on stage with her also had a pair of these glasses on. And they both, I can't remember which languages they both speak natively, but they both speak not English natively. And both have their own separate, like they're two different languages. And they were looking at each other, and they would both start speaking to each other in their own language. And the other person's glasses would live translate into their own language for them. So it's kind of like what that Google Meet live translation does, but on the glasses. And it did work. That was the part that actually eventually did not fully work. But this is one of those that's in development. It's still kind of, it's not going to be coming out anytime soon. But that was really cool. They also showed during the process of her showing what she was looking at, she had a coffee cup, and she's like, "Hey, what was that coffee? What was the company of that coffee that I was drinking?" And it popped up a building or a restaurant, not a restaurant, a coffee shop locally to there. And it was like, "Can you give me directions?" And then it would say it's about a 30-minute walk from here. And if you look up, it kind of tells you which way you need to go. If you look down, it shows you like a live map on the ground of which direction you need to go. It was actually really cool. It's basically what Google Glass was wanting to be 10 years ago, but now 2025 version of Google Glass. And it's really cool. I'm very impressed with what they're doing here. And that's like, as somebody that wears glasses every day, I would love to have something like this because it's just really cool. Like Meta has the Meta Ray-Ban glasses that you can get, but they don't have like a screen. It just talks to you and it's just AI stuff. And I've heard really good things about those. They are pretty cool. Some of the videos I've seen people get from those are really cool. But I really love the idea of having like basically a heads-up display on my glasses that I can interact with. And so, like, I don't think it's going to be anything that I get anytime soon because they're going to be expensive when they first come out. But I look forward to down the road eventually having more affordable versions of this available to more people. And that was the thing for me that I got the most excited about.
I'm still waiting for somebody to, like, for some giant corporation to show off a demo like this that doesn't look like a Black Mirror episode right before everything goes horribly wrong.
That's fair.
Because that is very consistent, like, with, Apple's whole, like, all of their promotional videos for the Vision Pro and Apple Intelligence, and the videos that Google showed off about this, all the ads I've seen for the Meta Ray-Ban stuff, it's all very like, this is what I see in a science fiction story right before the robots take over, or and Will Smith has to go shoot the building in the head and stuff. Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's given me iRobot, Black Mirror, Minority Report vibes.
I mean, that is fair. That is fair.
and I'm reminded every time we have one of these events, and every passing year, it's like, I can tell that all of the engineers and all of the marketers and all of the, management at these companies watched all of the same sci-fi that I did. They just took completely the opposite takeaway from it that I did. I was watching Terminator and thinking, wow, we should really be careful about how smart we make our weapons. And they were watching it and thinking, wow, Skynet looks really cool. And I'm like, guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time to be alive. That's for sure.
It's very
Wow.
true. But that's more or less everything they talked about at Google I/O. I do think that when it comes to AI stuff, Google tends to be the company that actually showcases useful things that I think a decent amount of people could and probably will use in the near to not so distant future. And whereas like other companies, they showcase things like Meta talks about AI stuff that's like, this is not something that they're even saying this isn't something that's coming out for 5 years, but here, let's show you it. It's like, well, that's not useful. But I like what Google's doing. They're actually adding AI into things that a lot of people already use every day, like into Gmail, into search, into, just things like that. I like it. Again, you have to kind of sparse through all the developer random stuff that they talk about this is a developer keynote, so you're going to get that. But I'm kind of excited about some of this stuff. Again, I haven't used AI a ton. I'm trying to use it more in my not necessarily daily life, but just regular life here and there. And it is getting better. It is getting more useful. And I like what Google is doing to make things even more useful down the road. So there you go. That's Google AI in much less time and much, much more capable, or much more understanding, I think.
Good. Yeah, it's good to see that there's some innovation going on with that. So,
And now I'm going to stop talking. Because my throat hurts.
you did your job. Okay.
Oh, hey, I
Valid.
still do. I still have a voice for the most part. That's a
That's
win.
good.
In my book.
All right.
We take those.
We'll go ahead and we'll move on. Got some Apple news. Well, yeah. Anyway, hey,
Sure.
one of the Tims won.
Yep. We're not saying which one, but Tim won. No,
Yeah.
I'm just, so yeah, remember, listener, how last week we talked about how Apple was not letting Fortnite onto the App Store. Epic didn't like that. Tim Sweeney had a fit. They sent a letter to the judge over all of this, and we're like, Apple's being jerks. They're not doing what you told them to. And then she, like an exasperated mother, basically wrote a response to Apple that was all like, look, you and Epic get together, sit down, and figure this out in a way that you can both get on board with, or you're both going to be back in court in like a week, And whoever the heck at Apple is in charge of all of this crap is going to be sitting in front of my bench trying to describe to me any of your logic. And so she sent that out. And the next day, Apple had evidently worked it out with Epic, and Fortnite is now back on the App Store with their own payment system, which is what started this whole thing.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go.
Tim Sweeney got what he wanted, and that's it's okay. Took 5.5 years, and I don't even know how many billions of dollars of lost revenue, to say nothing of the lawyers' fees they paid and so on and so forth. But it's finally over-ish.
Ish.
It's probably not over.
I'll add
I'm
a
sure
little
we're
bit
gonna
here.
hear more about it. But
I'll add a little bit here just because apparently Microsoft also wanted to jump on the bandwagon on this and also filed something saying, yeah, Judge, make Apple open up. That's basically what it was.
Really dumb because I think that what Microsoft filed was one of the things that Epic lost on. Like, Microsoft filed in support of Epic's position on one of the things that Epic lost in this lawsuit, because there was a whole bunch of stuff that Epic was asking for from the court, and the court found in favor of Apple on everything except for this one thing that is all like, no, you can't restrict these apps from sending their users outside of the app to make transactions. And that's it. And so Apple has been forced to allow that, and Epic now has Fortnite on the App Store with, you want to buy something, you click on it, it's going to send you to the website, and then you can make your purchase and then go back to the app, right? So, like, that's the only thing that Epic won on. And I think that what Microsoft's brief is just like, hey, no, you were wrong on ruling in favor of Apple on one of these other things, which I guess maybe makes sense because I think that Epic might be appealing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what they're just doing, but it's so weird, this whole situation. So like I said, it's not over.
No.
I wish it was, but
I think they did it because if you remember, last year we were supposed to get a Microsoft gaming store on iOS and Android, and they haven't delivered it. And I think this might be part of whatever reasoning.
Yeah,
So
probably.
that might be part of it. But yeah, I figured I'd throw that in there because I'm sure there's stuff on there too. So okay, let's go ahead and move on. Looks like we have just in some Google news. Notebook LM app.
Yeah, I was gonna mention this with the Google I/O stuff, but I forgot. This wasn't technically part of I/O, but it did come out during the week of I/O, so it's kind of I/O related, but not fully I/O related. Listener, I don't think we've ever talked about Notebook LM on the podcast before.
I don't
But
remember.
It's basically you can create your own podcast more or less about a topic that you want to. Well, not even like the way I've seen people use it before is like they'll get an article, they'll copy the article into Notebook LM, and then these two quote unquote hosts, AI generated voices, will make a short little podcast talking about that article. Kind of interesting. I've used it in the past. It was interesting,
Yeah.
But they now have a dedicated app for both Android and iOS. It was initially just a website thing they had to actually go to, but now they have an app for it. And the cool thing I like about this that I didn't fully realize that this was how it worked, but somebody else I was talking to about this, they said like you can put whatever text into it. Like, so somebody that I know I can't remember if it was just a regular like a regular novel type book or if it was a textbook of some sort. I can't remember, but they put the text of a book into Notebook LM and then had the AI hosts create this little podcast and read it back to them in a more natural way. But the other thing about that is like you can stop the podcast. I'm just going to call it that because that's more or less what it is. You can stop the podcast and ask questions about it, and then it will, answer those questions for you. So it's kind of like a personal tutor in a way. And the other thing that I really like about this is like you can create different parts of this. I can't remember what they call them, but like different, like when you add different things, you can put them into different, more or less like chapters or different things, like different sections inside the app. And so like you can take text from this place and this place and this place, put them all into one little section, and it'll only create content based on that section. And because it's only taking from what you give it, it theoretically is going to be more accurate than if it's just a general AI sparsing the whole entire internet for random answers. Like, and the example that we've always given is it's taking things from Reddit that gets upvoted a lot because it's funny, but not actually good information, because that happens on a very regular basis with AI. Yeah. So this one is only taking information from what you give it and then spewing that back out. And like I said, like somebody put in a whole book and was able to ask questions. Like it can give you an overview of the book, whether it's like a textbook, a novel, things like that. And then again, you can stop it, ask questions, and basically turn it into a lecture, more or less. Like you can, like if you're in a class, like college professor class type situation, you can ask questions. Whereas this is kind of the same thing. So I actually really, really like that. And I downloaded the app, and all I've done with it so far is I have put articles into it. It's like, just give me a summary of this article. And it takes, like a 10,000 word article and puts it into a 5-minute podcast explaining the whole thing. I'm like, that's actually extremely nice to have. And then if you have questions, you can, like I said, you can ask those questions. It was really cool. I really like it. And I do think this is the type of AI that can be extremely useful for a significant amount of people. And it is a Google product. It is Google's Notebook LM thing. But like I said, I really like it. I think anybody should download it and just try it. Whether or not you keep it and use it on a regular basis, that's depending on how you use AI. But just give it a try. I think it's really cool. And I'm glad that it's now just a dedicated app by itself that you can download on both Android and iOS.
Nice. It seems like the kind of thing that, like, this is finally an improvement over, trying to get ready for a test last minute in college by going to Wikipedia and reading the synopsis of a book.
Yeah.
This gives you the ability to listen to the synopsis of the book and then interrupt with a question halfway through, which is hopefully going to be more like talking to a person who did read the book.
Yeah.
Than it is just reading a synopsis of the book. Though, to be fair, if you're good enough at BSing, you can get by with just a synopsis of the book. I've done that many times. So,
yeah.
So you're saying you're a good BSer, is what you're saying.
Listen, I got a BS in English. That's what my degree is. And it is really kind of funny to me because getting a bachelor's of science in English is actually kind of hard. And the emphasis that I managed to get my BS under is probably the least BS English degree that you can get, which is technical communication. So, no, yes, that's the entire English department, Wes. It's BS. BS the department.
BS the department.
And yeah, I BS'd my way through that degree, which is why they gave me the degree. I proved that I could.
I'm so glad.
And I mean, I was going to say, there's almost 9 years of podcasts proving that he is good at that.
Right?
Fair. All right, fair.
Welcome to higher education in the United States.
All right, let's move on. All right, we got some general tech news. It's GPU time.
Yeah, listener. I lumped all of this into one because some of it is good. Some of it is interesting. Most of it is not. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this stuff because, like I said several weeks ago, I am turning over a new leaf, and I'm only going to talk about things that I find interesting or that I think are, good news, right? I'm trying to be more positive. So, there was an RTX 5060. Moving on. NVIDIA announced the 5060. There's a whole thing about it, about how, there was no Founders Edition of this card. So NVIDIA was not sending GPUs to anyone for reviews directly. So people were having to get their cards from third-party manufacturers, which is not terribly unusual. What is terribly unusual is the ridiculously small number of them that were being sent out, seemingly only to those reviewers who were willing to sign some kind of agreement with NVIDIA regarding the type of coverage they would be providing for the card. And even those people who did sign this thing, which honestly smacks of like journalistic lack of integrity, so maybe don't pay attention to those folks.
Yeah.
But even those people that got a card before the launch of the thing didn't receive drivers for it so that they could actually do testing until the day before it launched.
Oh my gosh.
So the RTX 5060, don't buy. Like, NVIDIA has straight up gone to war with the tech media. And here's the thing. As a person who covers Apple, right? Who pays attention to what Apple does and talks about it and that kind of thing. Yeah, so this is what they do. Apple will not send devices to anyone unless that person signs an agreement saying, I'm not going to say bad stuff about this product, essentially, which is why you almost never see like anyone who is at all critical of Apple with hands-on for an Apple device beforehand. And that's beforehand. Even after the launch of the thing, when the coverage of the device is not as pertinent, they still won't send anything to anybody. Apple doesn't send free stuff to people who basically won't get in bed with them. Everybody who you see reviewing iPhones after an iPhone has been released, they bought that iPhone. They paid money for it, just like you would. And that's how Apple has operated forever. And it's not good, but at the very least, it's expected with them, That is not how NVIDIA has traditionally operated, but it appears to be how they're operating now, which means you can't trust day one launch coverage of NVIDIA products. First bullet point. Second bullet point, you're probably not going to be able to trust, you're not going to be able to trust any of the coverage that gets fed to you algorithmically, because most of that stuff is going to be coming from people who have some sort of agreement with NVIDIA, and it's going to be pushed by NVIDIA themselves. So that's kind of the takeaway here. The RTX 5060 itself, there's an 8 gig version of the card. In fact, no, the thing is only 8 gigs, and it's like $300. And the big takeaway from the thing is that the price to performance just doesn't make sense for that amount of money with this thing. And honestly, you probably ought to go with the Intel Arc A580 or whatever it is. No, B580. Right? Yeah. Anyways. Yeah. So that's the long and short of it. AMD also announced the RX 9060, which is supposed to be competing, like with a 5060. There's two versions of this card. There's an 8 gig version, so 8 gigs of VRAM, and a 16 gig version. The 16 gig version is $350. The 8 gig version is $300. The 8 gig version performs about the same as the RTX 5060, so therefore, don't buy it. Right? The price to performance ratio for it just not that great. But at the very least, the only difference between the two cards is the amount of VRAM. They didn't pull like NVIDIA did with the GTX 1060, where there's a 3 gig version and a 6 gig version, but the 3 gig version also had fewer actual GPU processing cores than the 6 gig version did. It was a different piece of silicon. At least with the 9060, the silicon is the same. It's just the amount of RAM that it has. If you get the 16 gig version for $350, seems like that's a pretty good deal. So if you can find it for that price, okay, that's cool. It hasn't actually launched yet. It's supposed to be launching at the very beginning of June, I think, something like that. But they talked about it at Computex this past week, and there you go. Okay, neato. Then there's Intel, also at Computex, and I mentioned last week that like there was some stuff going on with Twitter that we couldn't tell if it was like a really cagey intern or just a bot that responded to everything with like a "Hey, stay tuned" message. So they did announce a new GPU at Computex. It's called the Arc Pro B60, and it is the same as the Arc B580. Just the same GPU. However, it has 24 gigs of VRAM instead of 12. So that's a significant boost. It also, Intel also was talking about this software layer that they've added to their Arc GPUs that will enable basically software-based Crossfire / what was the NVIDIA version of that called? SLI, right? Like it's a software version of that allows you to put up to 4 of these things in the same chassis, right? On the same motherboard. But there were some third-party manufacturers that Intel had in their booth that were showing off cards that had dual GPUs. So they had 2 of these B60s on the same card. So if you had 4 of those, you would have 8 GPUs, each of which would have 24 gigs of VRAM, and they would all have a shared cache of VRAM in that case. So all of this is to say this card was designed for AI.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason it exists. But because it is so much cheaper, if you were to get a cluster of these things, right, 8 of these GPUs, so the 4 of these dual GPU cards, all onto the same system, this thing would be able to handle models in excess of like double or triple the size of the highest end NVIDIA GPUs, because NVIDIA's GPUs won't let you pool resources this way. So, and 8 of these GPUs would cost less than one of NVIDIA's top of the line AI GPUs. So that seems to be where Intel is making their case with this thing. So it's a very interesting card, and kind of nice to know that Intel is putting a little bit more emphasis into their GPUs, and they do seem to care. They're trying to compete in this space, and that's good. Like, it's nice to see that, given the relative uncertainty about the future of their GPU division. And then after Computex was over, some analysts and leakers have been kind of tossing around rumors that, no, actually, the B770 that everybody wanted last week, that on Twitter kept getting a bot responding going, yeah, stay tuned. That's not dead. Like, it's still coming, according to these folks. It's just not coming until summer. So June, July timeframe, we might see an announcement for that. So that's where we're sitting in GPU land with all of these things. There's exactly one AMD card, the 16 gig 9060, that is maybe worth your money if you can find it at that MSRP. The 5060 and regular 8 gig 9060, just ignore those. And NVIDIA hates you and hates gamers.
Yep.
and hates just don't buy NVIDIA. Like, if you're going to be buying an NVIDIA card, it better freaking be used. Don't give your money to NVIDIA. And yeah, like, Intel hopefully hasn't given up on GPUs. That's kind of the like question mark takeaway from that whole thing. It's really hard to say, but there you go. GPU time. Now we're not talking about GPUs again for 6 months.
Yay.
Maybe. I hope.
We'll see. I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to get into some gaming news, and this is titled, It Is Time.
Parentheses Lion King
Yes,
music.
parentheses, Lion King.
I feel like that needs to be in there. Like that's, at the very end of the Lion King, where Rafiki says it is time, and then Simba walks.
I tried a good voice. I tried Rafiki.
Big orchestral music plays and all that stuff. That's what this moment is. Valve has released a build of SteamOS that is, quote, compatible with third-party hardware. Now, there's some caveats there. The way that you get this build is still by going through the whole, getting a Steam recovery image process on Valve's website. It's not like it's a public release of the thing. But they kind of had to do this because the Lenovo Legion Go S, that is the Steam version, that's launching. And so there is now, the Steam recovery image now supports the Steam Deck and the Legion Go S. But also, in the blog post announcing this, Valve said that there are a few other handhelds that they've tested this with, which the ROG Ally and the regular Legion Go, not the S, and it works. It's been validated with those. It's not designed for those, but they validated it and it is working. So it's okay, we've got a few of those. And then they also said in this blog post that it is compatible, it should be compatible with any handheld that is powered by AMD hardware. Which is to say, yes, anything that's running the AMD Z whatever mobile chips that were designed for handhelds, that's what they were talking about. But a lot of people are reading that as should be compatible with pretty much anything, any computer that is powered by AMD. Which probably doesn't necessarily relate as much to the processor as it does to the GPU, but I do currently have sitting beside me a computer that is powered by a Ryzen 5 2600 and an RX 6600. So I have an AMD powered gaming PC, and I am so tempted go download this recovery image right now and see if it is ready for primetime use. My plan, since there is currently no verified, supported way to dual boot SteamOS and Windows. So if you want to try and set that up, you best be good with your Linux foo, because you're going to need to roll your own freaking bootloader for that. And it can be done. I know that can be done. I just can't do it. So my workaround is that I'm probably going to get a separate drive entirely and install SteamOS onto that. And then I'll just be able to physically unplug one of the drives. Just be like, we're booting from this one today, boys, and plug in that one and try it. So that's it's so tempting. And yeah, this is as close as we've gotten to Valve going, yes, we have a validated, working public release of SteamOS 3. We're not quite there yet, but the version that they have out there now supposedly should work without too many issues with basically any AMD powered machine.
Dang.
So the future is here.
It's exciting.
That's exciting.
Oh, man. I'm surprised you haven't downloaded it.
Well, I got to get a drive. I need to go get an SSD.
True. Okay, true. All right.
So tomorrow.
After Best Buy opens tomorrow at 9 a.m. now.
They might have a sale for the holiday. You never know.
That's true. Yeah, maybe. Memorial Day sale for that.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on. We can talk a little bit about the Xbox app on PC. Looks like on this article I found, it says that they added Geforce Now as an option to play the cloud-enabled games. We went before the podcast to look to find this option. We couldn't find it.
I don't know where it is. It's not in
It's
mine.
not in ours, but yeah. So basically, what it's saying is you can use Geforce Now in the Xbox app if you're wanting to do any cloud gaming, which is saying that right now I believe Geforce Now is the better cloud gaming service right now because you can actually get up to, it says here, it can support up to 4K and 240 frames per second with DLSS 3 and ray tracing. So up to that. But you do. So what I was trying to find out, and the article is not as clear, is you still have to pay that subscription for it to play the games through the Xbox app.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense.
It does make, yeah.
They're just like integrated.
Yeah. So you do get those options on the supported games that can do that. So if you're someone that already subscribes to this, you have that option to link it to your Xbox account and maybe play the stuff through there. So, like I said, we tried to look for the podcast to see if we could. We didn't see any option there, but it does say that you can do that now. So, figured we'd throw that out there. Next thing I wanted to talk about, it's on here, is that Hellblade 2, that was a Xbox exclusive for a while, is now coming to PlayStation 5 this summer, which is good. Which also brings me to another point, because I want to ask this, and like we know most of all of, not all Xbox games are going to go multi-plat, right? Like, we know this, right?
I mean, if they keep releasing them broadly across many platforms, then yeah. Like, if there was ever any question about, like, what made giant AAA games successful, restricting them to a very small possible install base was never the thing.
Yeah.
You know? Like, the biggest games in the world were never console exclusives. It was always the Battlefields and the Call of Duties and the whatever. Yeah, the stuff that was as cross-platform as they could possibly get it. And, you know, we, on this podcast, which is called Calling All Platforms, I don't know if you noticed, listener, we've been preaching that for many years, and I appreciate that Microsoft appears to be noticing that. What's actually wild is that, from what I understand, PlayStation has come to an agreement with Valve to, like, not do anything weird with the games they have published on Steam if Valve were to come to an agreement with Microsoft to make Steam games available on the Xbox, which is a conversation that I believe is happening, if not necessarily settled on. So there's a real possibility in the near future, listener, that while technically PlayStation is not going to be publishing their games on Xbox, they did publish them in Steam, and you'll be able to play your Steam library on your Xbox, which means you're going to be able to play God of War on your Xbox. So, and you know who comes out looking like the hero in all of this? Valve. Good for them. What the heck, man?
Well, I know, okay.
Good grief.
I guess I bring this up just because I have seen so many people just, I guess they're upset on both sides of this thing, saying like, well, why would Microsoft lie to us? Because if you remember, what was it? Was it the beginning of this year where they were like, we're only going to put 4 games out on the PlayStation or something? Or was that last year? I can't remember. Anyway, if you believe that they were only going to do 4, guys, come on. Listen.
They were going to start with 4 and see how it went, but then that went very, very well. So yeah, obviously it's going to be all of them.
Like, okay, like this is a Xbox borrowed $69 billion from Microsoft to buy, you know, Activision. And so now Mr. Satya Nadella is asking Phil to pay him back. So what's Phil got to do, right? he's got to sell some games. He's got to make that money, pay that $69 billion back. But also, he can also pay for Game Pass on PlayStation by selling games on the PlayStation to pay for Game Pass and other projects and all these other things that are, if you haven't noticed, are coming out for Xbox. Has hit many big games this year and continuing. And I'm sure there's more after the showcase that's coming up in 2 weeks. I mean, I don't know. Like, this makes sense. I'm going to be honest. I can't remember if I mentioned it last time, but I mean, they just announced the remaster of a remaster of Gears of War is going to PlayStation. Like, and it's good because then, like, now my people that are on PlayStations and Steam can now just play Gears of War with me, which is great. Yep. Like,
I mean, listen, listener, just yesterday, I decided that I wanted to sit on my couch while I played Warframe. And could I have, hooked a PC up to my TV? Sure. Is the PC designed for that? Absolutely not. Though, once it's got Steam OS on it in big picture mode, maybe.
Got some thoughts here.
But
yes.
I do have a PlayStation 4 Pro hooked up to my TV, on the other hand, and Warframe exists on that platform, and it's got cross-save and everything, so, it's just really nice to be able to play games wherever and on whatever platform or hardware you've got, because then you can shop for whatever hardware, whatever platform you want to shop for, at any price you're willing to pay for it. And that gives you so many more options. And it means that these companies have to be competitive with each other in the options that they're offering you. And not having game restrictions on stuff like that just makes everything better for the consumer.
100%.
The less restriction you have in these places, the better. Which is why I feel like, despite some things, some areas where it seems like Valve really ought to be suffering in the way they handle Steam, they're just not. They're doing really well. And it's stuff hey, yeah, you want to list your game on as many platforms as you want and Steam? Sure. We don't care. We're not going to change how we deal with you. We're not going to shadow ban your game in the library. We're not going to make restrictions or exclusivity deals or whatever. Whereas the Epic Game Store is all about timed exclusivity deals. That's their entire jam. And Steam's just nah, just list the game here if you want. We'll sell it. And I don't know. It's a business model that freaking works, apparently.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's anyone who is getting upset about exclusives being available on other platforms fundamentally misunderstands a lot of things. I feel like this is all good news for you as a consumer. So unless you are a massive shareholder of stock in Sony and you're concerned about how the lack of exclusives will affect your stock valuation, I don't know. I guess maybe that's where you get concerned, but
I don't know. I
that ain't me. Can't relate. Sorry. I'm just, as a consumer, this is all good news.
It is. It's good because not only, but it's also good for the developers and the people that make these games, because it's the audience is going to stay. It's going to be more connected. What did they say? I'm going off. If I remember correctly, they did say Doom: The Dark Ages, a single player game, has reached more people because of all the different platforms it's on and accessibility, whether that's Game Pass, whether that's you buy it outright, Steam, all the stuff has reached more people reached. I'm going to say the number, and I can't remember if it's the right number or not, but they said it was 3 million people faster than their last game, which was Doom Eternal. and that was right before the
Mm-hmm.
acquisition and all that. And so like it's reaching people. Like it's getting there. Like you can't
Yeah.
Communities are coming together. People are like, I want to be honest, like you like Overwatch or not, there's so many people that play that, and for the cross play with all the stuff that they're doing, like games like that, it's been wonderful and great for the developers and things. So I don't know. Also, with another point, so yes, we talked about Forza, the big pillars of Xbox, you know, Forza, Gears of War, and Halo, guys. 2 of the 3 have already been announced. Yes, I'm calling it here. Yes, Halo's going to PlayStation and Steam. Like, guys, it's gonna go there. Like,
Oh, yeah.
and it's fine. Like, you're gonna be okay. Xbox users, guys, come on with me. Like, I'm with you. I'm here. I use that's what I use. I use Xbox. Like, this is fine. Like, it's
And it's one of those things where I'm all like, listen, if you're really into Halo Infinite, I can imagine that the reason you're into Halo Infinite is because of the
Bingo.
multiplayer at this stage. The game's been out for ages. Wouldn't you rather always have full lobbies and low wait times to get into a game?
Mhm.
Wouldn't that be better? Wouldn't you prefer the multiplayer to be a vibrant and extremely
But
active
also,
community?
let's look at this as a business thing. Let's say
Because having a bigger player base
not
gives
only
you
that, but if you put Halo on the PlayStation, let's throw. I can't remember. Is it a $60 game? Let's just say $60. PlayStation players pay the $60. That money they get from Halo, they can put into Halo for you. More maps, more content,
Yep.
more things, just by putting it on another player base. Hello.
And it's like, if you want a sequel to Halo Infinite, a game which of the Halo franchise, I believe, has been the least well received, the least well selling aside from like 5.
I don't know
think.
that. I don't know that, but I would.
I'm not sure, but like the sales numbers were down significantly from Halo
Right.
3
Right.
and
Right.
ODST and stuff like that. Like, I know that. So, you know, this is a franchise that like its future is not guaranteed. So a sudden influx of cash from PlayStation players would help guarantee a
Yeah.
sequel to
Or
Halo
DLC
Infinite.
or another
want-
game.
Yeah, you want more Halo, you want more
Mhm.
sales, guys. Like, none of this is bad. Exclusivity hurts you in terms of getting, you know, these sequels and stuff like that. It's bad. The only time that I think exclusives make sense are timed exclusives, and timed exclusives can work really well for like early access style.
Right.
playtesting.
No, I agree. Yeah.
You can, and like you success stories here. You look at Hades. Hades is a game that had an early access period on Steam, but when it launched as a timed exclusive for 6 months or a year or something like that on the Epic Game Store. People downloaded it, they played it, they liked it, but there were some rough edges that needed to be polished off. And so Supergiant Games spent a year or 6 months or whatever polishing those rough edges before releasing it to everyone else. And it became probably the single most successful, isometric roguelite in the history of the genre, right? Like, it was an incredibly successful indie game. Timed exclusive was the reason for that. But timed is the point here. So you want to look at Hellblade 2, that was a timed exclusive. I think that we're probably going to continue to see that sort of thing from Microsoft. They will release games to the Xbox owners first, and then 6 months or a year or 2 years later, they'll release it to everybody else. And I think that's great. I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, it'll have a timed exclusivity thing where it's on Game Pass, it's in the Xbox store, and that's it. And then after that, it will go to PlayStation, it will go to Switch, it will go to Steam, it will go to
Wherever.
I don't know, Mac App Store. Probably not, let's be honest, but
no,
Something. But no, I guess we're saying like I don't know. if you have a problem, like you said, with this multi-plat strategy, I'm sorry. Like, you're going to be very disappointed in the future with all these things that are happening. But
Well, and listener, as the non-gamer of the group, I want to give my input onto this because I mean it's kind of been mentioned already, kind of, but if you think about it, like Microsoft has always made their money on software. They're a software company first. They're not a hardware company. Yes, they do make consoles, but their big cash cow has always been software, and games are now soft. Like it's always been software, but it's definitely more so now because you don't buy a disc anymore like you used to hardly. It is exclusively software, and like hardware has, yes, you have profit margins that they obviously build into the price, like so they can make money off hardware, but that's never going to continuously make them, like they have to literally sell, like in order to make money they have to, I don't know how to explain this really, but like there's just a cap basically on how much money they can make on each console, more or less. Whereas like a game, once they've paid off what they put into the game, that's just profit from then on. So once they've made that money back, it's just full profit, and that can go back into developing more for that game or more games. And the more people that have the ability to buy that game is going to make them more money. So like Caleb and Wes have already mentioned this. I mean, more people means more people buying it, more people or more money that Microsoft is going to be making, and being able to put that money into more games or making that game better or different things like that. So if you like Wes is saying, if you for some reason think this is a bad idea, then you're just wrong. I'm just going to say it. You're wrong. It's not a bad idea. It's only good for Microsoft, and that's really what they actually care about is just themselves. But it's also good for the consumer because, again, if it's available for more people to play, then like Caleb said, that means more people for you to play. Because right now, some people may not care about that. You might just be the type of person that plays the game by yourself, and good for you. Have fun. But most people nowadays, they like to play multiplayer. And if you're going to be playing multiplayer, you need more people to play with. And as we all know, PlayStation is the king when it comes to console sales. So if the games can go to PlayStation, that just means basically tripling the amount of people that are going to be available to play.
And tripling that money.
You really should not complain
put it
about
into your games that you like to get more stuff. Oh man. Yeah, I think overall it's good. Like, things are changing obviously, and maybe it's this you're afraid of change, I don't know. Or you just need the other platform to just suck so you feel better about your purchase. I don't know. Maybe you're that kind of person. But the more people play, we all win. Like Caleb said, consumer wins. Like, listen, I've spent a lot of money on Microsoft. Probably, I don't want to tell you how many games I have, but I don't trust them. They're a company. You get what I'm saying? Like,
yes,
you shouldn't trust PlayStation.
Corporations are not your
our
friends.
Okay, and to plant your flag and put it on something and die on it, like, I think you should step away for a week, maybe 2 weeks, touch grass. If you're allergic to grass like I am, go touch something else outside, maybe with gloves.
Go find some dirt.
Stay away from pollen. Like, I don't know, because listen, these corporations, they don't. Even if you were to be like, well, I'm no longer going to buy this game or an Xbox, and I'm going to go buy PlayStation because they care. Well, you're still going to be funding Microsoft with all these games. So, like, I don't know.
Well, and I mean, Caleb kind of mentioned this before, but the other thing is, like, if the game is available to play anywhere, that makes it so like Xbox and PlayStation have to compete more on the hardware side of
Yes.
things. Now
Yep.
that doesn't necessarily mean that prices are going to go down, because I don't think that's going to happen. But
Oh, probably not.
it just means that the hardware itself is going to get better quicker.
Well, and it means that the games are going to be competing with each other too.
Yeah.
More, like you look at franchises like the Tomb Raider games and the Uncharted franchise. They're the same game.
Yep.
All right. And they were never actually competing with each other, really, because they were on different platforms.
Yeah.
So it was like, nah, man, if you like get the games all onto the same platforms, then they have to compete directly with each other. Because who's going to buy like a crappy knockoff of Among Us if you can just play Among Us?
Exactly.
Right? Which, Among Us is available on pretty much every platform, so they knew what they were
And that's
doing.
what made it so successful. That's why people know it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you said. So I think it's good. This will be good. Gaming, the platform's changing. Or you could go buy PC and just not worry about it, and all games will come to you. Okay, so just we'll do that. But no, I wanted to bring that up because I've just heard so many people just having issues with whether it's exclusive or if this thing's dying or whatever it is. I'm like, nah, listen, if you think Xbox is dying, they spent $69 billion on just one company, but they also spent however much with all the other little ones they bought. And I don't know, and their revenues are going up and everything's happening. So I don't think they're going away. And also like we beating a dead horse here. You want multi-plat. So guess I'll end that there. Unless you guys have anything else on that to add to that, we'll move on. Okay. They are shaking their heads no. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Unless, Landon, you got one more thing for us?
No.
I thought he lost his voice there for a second, and I was probably have to answer for him because he's sick, Anywho. Listener, we appreciate you listening to us and going on our rants and everything we do. And we went on that multi-platform thing a little longer than we thought, but which is good. But if you have a comment on that or a suggestion or want us to talk about more or anything like that, feel free to get a hold of us on our social media platforms, as well as callingallplatforms.com. You can check out our YouTube channel. Go ahead, like, bell, subscribe, comment, say, hey, we want more videos. That'd be great. Caleb will get right on that.
Yeah.
All right, listener, have a good week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Calling All Platforms is a production of Supporter Sound Studios. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/callingallplatforms.